Each speaker will now have 5 minutes for closing remarks.
In my closing remarks, I'd like to draw together several of the threads of tonight's debate. We've been debating whether the resurrection of Jesus is a fact or a fiction. I think it's clear tonight we've heard no evidence at all that the resurrection narratives are fictional or false stories. All of the evidence presented tonight has been on one side, that this is a fact. Now, is it in fact credible evidence? Well, I argue tonight that there are 4 facts that are generally accepted by New Testament historians today: the honorable burial, the empty tomb, the post-mortem appearances, and the origin of the disciples' belief in the resurrection. In his last speech, Professor Avalos was reduced to quibbling about linguistic points over Aramaic in an argument that wasn't even part of my case that I presented tonight. But moreover, in fact, he's simply wrong about this. As I said, the Aramaic that would be behind Teimiaton Sabaton is B'chath B'shabutha. This is attested in the second Targum of Esther, chapter 2 and verse 9. The Hebrew B'chad B'shabbat, you have a similar expression in Genesis 8:5, where it refers to on the first day of the month, B'chad Lachodesh. So this is perfectly good Hebrew, perfectly good Aramaic from this time, and that is why, frankly, most scholars today do regard this phrase in Mark as a Semitism, that is to say, as a relic of an earlier Aramaic speaking milieu out of which it came, and that attests to the primitiveness of its tradition. But suppose I'm wrong about that. Suppose that's incorrect. What? So what? It wouldn't affect any of the arguments that I've presented tonight because that wasn't part of my case. Now, Dr. Avalos is right that there are a lot of those Aramaic mistakes in the book of mine that he mentioned. I noticed those to my mortification after the book had appeared in print, and they're printer's errors that resulted from inaccurate reading of the Hebrew letters. So he's right, and I hope that this can be corrected in a future edition. Well, what about the best explanation of these 4 facts then? Is the best explanation that God raised Jesus from the dead? We've seen that Dr. Avalos' attempt to restrict the best explanation from the resurrection is self-refuting and overly restrictive, that our explanation is not ad hoc, and that his only attempted way to try to explain the resurrection away through hallucinations has 3 powerful objections against it. And therefore, I think he's been unable to refute my argument that the best explanation of these facts is that God raised Jesus from the dead. But I want to close by saying something about my point at the very beginning of my first speech, that for the majority of Christians, belief in the resurrection is not founded upon historical facts. It's founded upon a personal encounter with the living Lord himself. This is what happened to me. Unlike Dr. Avalos, I was not raised in a Christian home. But as I became a teenager, I began to ask the big questions in life. And in the search for answers, I began to read the New Testament. And I was absolutely captivated, arrested by the person of Jesus of Nazareth. And to make a long story short, after a period of the most intense soul-searching that I've ever gone through, I just simply came to the end of my rope and turned my life over to Him. And I experienced a kind of spiritual rebirth in my life, in which God, who had been distant and removed, suddenly became a living reality in my life. A reality that I've walked with now day by day, year by year, for over 30 years. And this is a reality that I believe you too can find if you will seek Him with an open heart and an open mind. So if you're seeking to know the truth about the resurrection, there are really 2 avenues available to you. There is the avenue of historical investigation and research. And if you take that avenue, you will stand well within the mainstream of critical biblical scholarship today. But there is also, more importantly, that personal existential avenue, whereby you can come to know the living Lord Himself as a personal reality in your life. And I would commend that to you as well. I believe that it can change your life in the same way that it changed mine.
I very much appreciate your applause for me. Thank you. There will be a full postmortem analysis of the lecture, full postmortem analysis lecture on this debate in the near future, probably on Monday. contact the ISU Atheist and Agnostic Society. Well, let's go back to what I said I would show. The question was, is there sufficient historical evidence to establish that Jesus resurrected from the dead? My position was, no, there isn't sufficient historical evidence. I said that I would show that some of the main facts on which Dr. Craig bases his belief in the historicity of the resurrection are no such thing. I think I showed that in Mark 16:2. What he said was Aramaic is not, he's still quoting you later text, not telling you. I think I showed it when he said Josephus said James died for his faith in Jesus. Josephus didn't say that. So I think I have proven that some of the things he calls facts are no such thing. And I think I showed that what Dr. Craig's so-called historical criteria for judging historicity can be used to establish the historicity of events he would otherwise deem to be false or non-historical. That's why he cannot explain to you why he cannot take historically Matthew 27. But he wants you to take historically Mark 16, even though they say the same thing pretty much. They were raised. And let me tell you, I come from the old school of Christian apologetics. One of my heroes was Robert Dick Wilson. Robert Dick Wilson said he would learn any language, acquire any tool in order to check out the evidence. I try to live by that. I try to check out everything that I can when I do my research. And I left the resurrection belief because of specific evidence. Not because of some, emotional ground. No, because I went through and researched systematically the evidence to the greatest depth I could. So, to me, I think that you should be acquainted with the primary sources if you're going to do apologetics. You should be acquainted with the primary languages if you're going to do apologetics. Otherwise, a lot of people just think that really this is great scholarship. It isn't. It is smoke and mirrors scholarship. And please, Dr. Craig, for the love of everything, don't use Sherwood White's claim of 2 generations for legends to form. He backtracked almost immediately, and his statistical data was one event. But as Ecclesiastes 3:8 says, there's a time for war and time for peace. Let me end with a hopeful, peaceful message. Instead of trying to prove that our favorite sacred stories are better than those of everyone else, why not learn to share your sacred stories with those of others and see in them shared hopes and aspirations? So, Dr. Craig, I thank you for coming to the debate. I hope you don't feel I was too rough on you. I just didn't want to disappoint you when you said you wanted specific challenges.